shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British people, will carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world with all its powers steps forth to the rescue and the liberation.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. But always will our whole nation remember the character. I ask the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Orale! Oh shit, wrong show.
Hola!
Hola! Shit, I just ran from East LA back to Valhalla. How is everyone doing there tonight? Hello, Purple Valkyrie, Clobbering Times, Darth Haster, Heiress of Chaos, the Battle Angel. Of course, we've got ColinP Smith here. Luis Sparrow. Hello, Luis. Hello, Rambling Canuck. Brother, if you're still there, check your DMs on Discord, brother. Since you love talking about World War II, brother, and can talk about it for hours. I know we're missing Dave Bob. Gun Bunny, good evening. Mark the Infinitely Tired. Dave Bob, just an update on Dave Bob. And thank you, Clobbering Times. I loved getting to make that. I loved getting to make that intro. Dave Bob is all right. He's got power. They're doing okay, but his internet's down. He didn't know if he would have it back up. Jeremy Burton. Hello, Jeremy. Canuck, like I said, if you're still out there, check your DMs on Discord, brother. I threw you an invite. Because we are missing a panelist. Dave Bob is okay. Darth Haster, Mrs. Dave Bob is okay. They are okay. They just don't have internet. So they've got power. They have weathered the storm. Of course, things have got to get back to normal there, and we don't know how bad the damage around that is. And Clobbering Times, it is good to see you, brother. I'm glad you're okay too. Clobbering Times and Dave Bob were right in the path of that damn thing. So I'm glad that you guys are okay. And of course, I've got panelists tonight. We have the Doctor of Destruction, Adega Outlaw. Hail, Adega. How are you doing?
Hey, good evening.
And we have ColinP Smith, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing tonight, Colin? Or is it morning there? Shit, it's morning there, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just gone 1 o'clock in the morning here. I'm fine, thank you.
No, yeah, and good evening, Jedi Bill, and good evening, Nina.
Mug full of coffee, so I'm all ready.
We got coffee at the ready, of course. And then that was a big thing. That was a big thing for the allies, for everyone involved in that coffee. Getting that morning cup of Joe. I can't imagine it was that easy
Did I tell you guys about my family and coffee? At least well before I was born back then. Did I ever mention that?
No, you didn't.
Of course, I told you my dad lied about his age and ran off and joined the Navy. He got this massive 14-year-old sailing. But they were giving out ration stamps in the United States at one point, and one of those ration stamps was coffee. And he said he gave up coffee then, knowing that his family was fighting over his ration stamps while he was gone. So there's no way I'm going to touch any stuff that's making my family fight. It was that precious to them.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
No, I did not know that. That's crazy. Can you imagine that? Could you imagine just, I mean...
I have a couple of those stamps still.
Really?
Yeah, I got them from good old World War II.
Wow.
Can you imagine fighting like that for coffee?
My
Well, I
mum-
guess we can. That people have been fighting like that for toilet paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mum was what? She was 6 when the war started, 1939. That is. So she was 12, I think, when it finished. And she lived in London. So she remembers. My late father also. They remember. So obviously, Mum remembers rationing and the like.
That must have been a hell of a thing to live through.
Mm.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine that, because we know the damage that was done to London, the bombings, the constant bombings. One of the, I know, it's before anybody jumps at me when I say this. It was lucky that the B-2 rockets were not as advanced as they could have been. They rushed through that so much that when they fired them, they just kind of went wherever. There was a guidance system inside, but it was so rudimentary and so new that they almost never hit their intended target.
The really weird thing about this is earlier on this evening, there's a UK streamer. He does politics and history, and he does a stream each evening on this day in history. And for some reason, I don't know exactly why.
Is that Binge Think?
No, this is the Britisher.
Yeah, no, Binge Think he's British as well. He does every day. He reads the news report from this date only in 1940. And he talks about. I'll get into it later. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't know. No, but it just happened that for some reason they got on to Second World War on the first hours of going on about the Second World War and weird. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we're talking about this on tonight. So World War II day today.
So Adega, tell us about this this streamer that broadcasts.
Yeah, I started communicating with him just a little bit. I'm going to try and do it a little bit more. Sometime we could probably bring him on. Very well spoken. I don't know where he got his, and I got to find this out from him. But his channel, if you're interested, he doesn't have a lot of followers there, but it's an outstanding history if you want to hear what the news report was for the day on the war in England. He gives anywhere from 2 to 5 minute report every day on what had happened on that date, and he's in the 1940 right now, the exact date. Like today, he talked about the weather had started to clear because the past 2 days it wasn't, and he gives reports of how many bombers came in from Germany, what their new tactics were, how many planes blew up, what airfields they attacked, and if you listen to him, and he'll do he's quoting from somebody, so he'll modify the voice so it sounds like it's coming over a radio, and it puts you back in realizing that what England went through on a day-to-day basis. They had pilots that were shot down every day. They had airfields that were blown up every day. They had bombers that went over different parts of the country every single day. Sometimes the bombers were successful. Most of the times they weren't. It was a phenomenal job, which the British people did at the time, considering how many planes the Germans kept sending over and over and over. And they were always beating them 2, 3, 4 to 1. But it was just the constant every day. Could you imagine sitting in your city knowing that you got enemy planes flying over, or the chance to fly over, every single day for years? It was just crazy what we went through.
Let's put it this way. Excuse me. Oh, I don't want to run away. My mum, I've always been fascinated by the Second World War. My sister's 3 years younger than me, not so much so. As a kid, like most kids and teenagers, I was not very, I was not very aware of others. I think I might have bugged mum and dad a bit too much about it, but I got old enough to understand. She lived to it. We got to the point where my sister and I, if there was anything on about the war, one of us had a hand near the remote, and the second we knew an air raid siren was going to go on, that was it. It went on mute. We did that for about 20, 25 years. So this was probably the mid-80s, 90s, before Mum was, before Mum stopped us doing it, because we knew that just the sound of an air raid siren, even though Mum knew it was TV, it was whatever, it didn't take her back or anything, but we knew it was from etc. So that's the kind of effect it can have. Binge think, thank you.
Yep, I've got a link in chat, everyone. Binge think, that is the link to the channel. And you guys mentioned, you guys are talking about the constant swarm of German planes that were coming into Britain at the time. And one of the things I remember going over, when I was going over this with my dad, because all of this was like required reading at the academy when I was growing up, he told me that the Brits had this wonderful radar network set up, and they had a command center. And Colin, I'm sure you know what that was called. I cannot remember the name of it at the moment, but it was like a command and control center where everything was being dumped in, and they were constantly sending out their fighters saying, okay, they're coming here, they're coming over this, go get them. And they were constantly sending out transmissions of, okay, they're coming here, we're getting a radar ping here, we're getting this here, this many planes here. And it was the system that saved them from getting completely just bombed to death by the Germans.
You see in films like I forgot what it is. I forgot what it was. It's now, I think it is a museum. I saw not long ago, but I'm not sure how old the program was. It was being refurbished. But yeah, I mean, you see pictures of it. You see pictures of things like the Battle of Britain, the movie in the 60s, and they've got these pictures. They've got this massive, great table that's got a map on it. Yep. It is literally a wargaming table. It is literally. They literally have people. You see, I know. Lindy Page did a video a while ago about the wargamers who actually fought out World War II, and they had wargamers, tabletop wargamers, but they actually helped fight and plan using their experience and using wargaming techniques of the time to plan it. But you literally see them literally like literally a croupier stick, and they'll push a model of a plane on a stick. But yeah, there were these. The thing is also these massive, great towers along the southeast coast. Really, I mean, these days we think of radar, and we think okay, screen. The thing going around, beep, 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 and pings up, and that pings up. You get a ping that tells you what the plane is, what the height is, all the rest of it. No, these radars were they were literally oscilloscopes. So it was literally pretty similar to the sort of wave that you see on, even these days, on a heartbeat machine or something in a hospital. It was that was the level of technology that mainly young ladies of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, the WAFs, were actually reading and interpreting. And there were no strong women before the 2000s. Yeah, right.
Yeah, my ass.
And the amazing job that was done. Like I said, if you go and you listen to these reports, by August, because we're up to August, obviously, of 1940, the Germans were sending in wave after wave after wave, and they had their escort fighters, and they could only go so far, and they'd run out of fuel, and they'd have to go back to France. But the Hurricanes specifically, but the Spitfires were doing a good job too. Those are both British planes. Were tearing these guys up so much that the escort fighters of the Germans were later on told, you have to stick with the bombers. You can't go out and engage these British planes before they get there. You know, they had different decoys where they'd fly at different altitudes and different things, but it got to the point where the British were harassing them on such a regular basis that they kept the fighters close, and the fighter pilots for the Germans were starting to have fits, and you can hear it in the guy's news report, because it basically made them more targets of opportunity. These Hurricanes would come in and start tearing up the bombers, and the German fighters are just sitting there waiting to be hit as well. It was but it was every single day. And the radars, you may know better than I do, Colin, but I think they only went out to about 50 miles. They could see something coming, but they didn't know the altitude, and they didn't know the speed per se right off the jump. All they knew is get planes over there as quick as you could.
Yeah. That's actually a photo of Uxbridge Control Centre, actually in operation.
Yep, that's just like the picture I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They're the women saving people's lives every day.
Yep. But yeah, they actually got, you're right, they sent them up, and they didn't chase them back because they wanted them out. They had to come back as well, because don't forget their bases were being hit and bombed.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's really another one of these really weird, I don't know if luck is quite the right word, things, but it's actually an anniversary I can't remember, it was this week, in the last, between this week, so between Monday and Sunday of this week, I can't remember the exact date. It was on the stream earlier on, the anniversary of a German bombing raid, because of course they were coming with the dark. They didn't have the radar navigation or anything like that. They missed their target and they bombed London. Churchill sent in the RAF to bomb Berlin, and that happened this week in 1940. Hitler got ever so slightly irritated by this and turned to the Blitz, which helped take the pressure off the RAF airfields. So had he continued going just for the airfields, things might have been a little bit different.
It was Hitler's first mistake.
And welcome, Rambling Canuck. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on. This is a topic that I know a lot on. It's kind of my obsession. But yes.
And we know that it wasn't his only mistake, because
no, it was his first mistake. It was his first mistake, which was because it was a bomb that landed just outside of a Britain town, and then Churchill decided to bomb Berlin, and then Hitler made the famous speech, "For every bomb that lands on a German city, 1,000 will rain down on London." And when he made that choice, he lost the war. because at that time, Britain was having a very hard time keeping up with the losses of the aircraft. They didn't have to worry about pilots because pilots could bail and they'd land on Britain's soil, so that they weren't over Germany yet. They were still over Britain. So the pilots, which is your main key point, as Japan would find out later on in the war, your pilots are your resource. The plane, you can just build another one. It's very hard to train another fighter pilot.
Right, they were taking about every 5 planes, they would decommission one pilot, whether he was injured or killed. But it was about 5 to 1, so they kept their pilots doing pretty well. Yeah.
So what ended up happening is he switched the bombing raids from bombing the airfields. And there's a very famous line. Churchill went down to that command center you were talking about, and he asked them during the biggest air raid that the Germans did, what do we have in reserve? And the answer that he got was nothing. They're all up. So there's nothing in reserve. They are going on full tank, full bore. And if it had not been for the fact that, well, luckily he was a moron and decided he had to have a pissing contest. Well, if you're going to bomb my city, I'm going to bomb your city. If he kept bombing the airfields, the RAF would not have been able to keep air superiority. So it was his first big mistake of the war.
Yeah. I'd be tempted to say his first big mistake was coming against Britain in the first place, but maybe not. Yes,
I agree there.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a major. I mean,
and I'll say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, people, it's been said quite often that actually the Allies' biggest advantage in World War II was named Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
He wasn't that bright. And I'd just like to throw the asterisk going up against Britain and Canada because we were in it from the beginning.
I'll explain that. Going up against the British Empire oblique Commonwealth.
Yes.
Yes. You guys were in it in the first place. I
don't know. Have you covered the Atlantic yet, Loki?
No, we covered the
Atlantic War.
No, we covered the war in the Pacific, and we're covering what we're doing tonight. So if you want to bring it up, bring it up.
Well, the Canadians did a lot for the Atlantic convoys before the United States joined. There were stories of Canadian soldiers boarding corvettes, which were really small kind of destroyer ships, and they were to transport the convoys across. The only problem is the ships had been built. They just really hadn't had their guns put on yet. So what the Canadians did was they put wooden cutouts of where there's supposed to be armament and went across anyway, because we're crazy like that.
Well, it's either crazy or having cojones the size of your entire state, because that took a lot to be able to do that.
I wonder if that's where Doolittle got it. I wonder if that's where Doolittle got the idea during the raid on Japan, because we know that the planes were so weighed down with fuel that when they launched off the aircraft carriers, there was no way they were going to get to their destination and then get to China. So they stripped everything they could, and that included guns. And Doolittle was quoted as saying, "I don't care if you have to use broom handles to trick them, put them in the damn plane."
Yeah. And for a while, the Merchant Marine, so not even the Royal Canadian Navy, but the Merchant Marine was the main force protecting the convoys. And then later on, they would protect the American coast as well during the reign of Admiral King, the biggest dumbass on the planet. But anyway, moving on.
We couldn't. I have to admit, but we all do this, and we all say Britain standing alone. Yeah, but we aren't just talking about this little island of ours.
No,
we had you guys. We had the South Africans. We had Rhodesia at the time, Zimbabwe. We had Australia. We had India. We had the entire empire.
Yes.
Well, probably the reason it was a world war from 1939, actually. I mean,
and the best thing to ever happen to Winston Churchill was switching First Lord of the Admiralty for Prime Minister. Which he probably wouldn't be remembered as much as he is now.
We also had American pilots giving up their giving up their commission and being paid to fly over or to sail over and fight.
Yep.
Yes, and also what would happen too sometimes, I've heard stories from people that were on home defense here, as my dad was. The Americans would conveniently leave things on the border that would mysteriously cross over and then be sent over to Britain.
Yes.
I don't know how that happened, but it just did, darn. I don't know how that shipment of bullets ended up from that border to this border and then over there. Don't know.
And planes as well. They did planes. And they could not drive. From what I heard, they could not drive them over the border, so they actually had them pulled with horses. They pulled the planes over the border with horses, and then brought the horses back across the border between the U.S. and Canada, and just left them there. And we're like, oh well, if the Canadians find him, I guess
damn. I don't know how that happened.
Because the American public did not want to get involved in the war.
No, they did not. No. And one of Hitler's other very stupid mistakes, other than attacking Russia, was, and this is something that's overlooked, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States still did not have a reason to go into the European theater at all.
Well, part of it wasn't so much that our president at the time and some of the people he were listening to were, and most people don't know this, but they were kind of buddies with Hitler.
Yes, but officially the United States had a reason to go to war against Japan. Now, yes, Japan and Germany were allied. However, the American people at the time would not have supported a European first, Japan second motto had it not been for 2 days after Pearl Harbor, when, for the first time in World War II, the dumbass actually declares war on a country.
Yeah.
It was him himself declaring war on the United States that gave the United States the excuse to go with Europe first, Japan second.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing we mustn't forget, of course, Canuck, is that you guys, you guys were our prison.
Yes.
I don't want to say prison camp because that phrase has bad connotations, but you were. You had a lot of the Axis POWs ended up in Canada.
Yes.
Because it was a bit harder for them to escape from there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, I think I've got a feeling actually there's only about 1 or 2 German prisoners who ever actually escaped from Britain.
Has anybody talked about the most craziest idea that Winston Churchill ever came up with?
Which one was that?
He wanted to create, and they actually put a whole bunch of resources behind this thing. and they tested it here in Canada. They were going to make an aircraft carrier out of ice.
Oh yeah, yes, ice
and put it in the middle of the Atlantic so that they could close the Atlantic gap. But they were going to make this huge, enormous aircraft carrier out of ice that would resustain itself, and they tested it here. So it was made out of steel and ice. And they were just going to put it in the middle of the Atlantic, and basically it was going to be a floating iceberg with fighter jets on it.
Was there something like wood chips involved in there as well?
Yeah, it was a special type of ice that was designed and tested here in Canada. But by the time that they were ready to go, the aircraft had developed enough that they no longer had a need for it because they had already closed the gap. But yeah, it was something that Britain wanted to do. It was this big, bloody ice aircraft carrier, and they wanted to plop it down in the middle of the Atlantic, and to fix the. It would be unsinkable. They wouldn't be able to sink it with a submarine. So it would be an air base in the middle of the Atlantic, made of ice.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
And then Bletchley, a really good idea. But like you said, technology, when you put people in crunch like that, it just started advancing so quick. We talked a little bit about the war in the Pacific and how the U.S. did leaps and bounds beyond all the other countries when it came to aircraft. We started off with the Warhawks, which were being beaten by everything. And then we ended up with the Mustangs and the Corsairs at the end, and they were the kings of the sky by that time. It just
if only they had put in much development into the torpedoes.
Right. Well, yeah.
It only took 2 years, but they finally got it right.
Well, you want to talk about advances in aircraft? You can't forget about the ME-262.
Oh, yeah.
There was a...
That was scary.
It's an abomination twin sister.
What was the name of the mountain that they were building them damn things on?
I couldn't remember.
Walpersburg. Hold on.
Yeah, well, there was those, and then there was the rocket gliders that they had, which those were made in more quantity because they were cheap and easy and death traps. Basically, they would launch into the air at a high velocity. They'd go until till the engine stopped, and then glide down, essentially gliding through the bomber formation, shooting everything they could, and then land.
But they were going so fast that there was no way the bombers could ever shoot them.
No. But yeah, the whole point was they would get up to altitude with the jets and then glide back down to Earth. And as they're gliding down, they'd shoot through the bomber formations.
Okay, so it is Walpersburg. I want to read this guy for the chat. In 1944, a construction project was commenced by Germany to convert the former sand mines at the Walpersburg to a bomb-proof underground factory for the production of the Messerschmitt ME-262. To achieve this, the existing tunnel system was extended to 30 kilometers by the use of over 12,000 forced laborers. Almost none of them lived. From Italy and Eastern Europe, and a further 3,000 skilled workers. Conversion of the former sand mine to an aircraft facility led to a construction of a runway. Now get this, guys. They had a concrete elevator that would go from where you unloaded the plane all the way up to the top so that it could use the top of this place as a runway to get it up enough speed and go into the air. An inclined runway built into the side of the hill was used to move the aircraft from the ground level tunnel exit up to the runway. And the first ME-262 took off on 21st of February 1945. Eventually, around 20 or 30 completed aircraft left this facility prior to the end of the war. If they had gotten these things off the ground sooner, which was another mistake, because our good buddy Adolf was going back and forth between the wolf packs, the submarine fleet they were creating, and the planes. And he kept getting told, if we can get these in the air, we can win the war. And he kept focusing on the submarine fleet and the submarine construction base. And he would switch. He would be like, well, we're not doing enough damage with the wolf packs. Let's focus on the aircraft. And then the aircraft weren't coming along and weren't working out the way he wanted them to, as fast as he wanted to. And then this dumb son of a bitch wanted to make them bombers. Instead of being fighter planes, they wanted to turn these jets that no one else had, that no one had ever seen before, into a bomber, which was absolutely pointless.
Yeah, the other wonder weapon that took a lot of the jets' financial and manpower away from it was the V1, V2 project.
We brought that up earlier, the V2s, which could not hit the broadside of a barn.
Well, yeah.
And again, no one had ever seen a rocket like this. And then those same people that designed that would eventually go on to work in the space program.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the really scary thing with the fighter jet was right before the war ended for Germany. A submarine left Germany on course with Japanese people on board, Japanese general, I believe. Anyway, and a couple of delegates. En route to Japan. On board was a fully taken apart jet fighter. En route to Japan. Luckily, that thing was sunk before it got there. Just think of jets in the Pacific. It almost happened twice.
The difference in fuel. If the Japanese used those as kamikazes, we are talking about hellacious damage to ships. The Euros were bad enough, but the jet fuel on board those Messerschmitts would have been a whole nother ball game, a bomb upon itself.
Yeah, and actually they missed the opportunity not once but twice.
And Jedi Bill's got a question. Canada is known as the 48th parallel. Am I wrong or right?
I thought the 48th was. I thought the 48th was the divide between North and South Korea.
I think you're right.
No, 48.
We'd have to go to a map for sure, but I don't know those.
North of zero altitude, Earth, it crosses Asia, Pacific Ocean, North America, and in the Atlantic Ocean. In Canada, the parallel forms part of the border between Quebec and New Brunswick. So it actually crosses France, Germany, Australia, Hungary, Slovakia, on and on and on and on and on. Starting at the prime meridian and heading eastwards, the 48th parallel passes through Romania, Ukraine, Moldavia, Ukraine, Russia, China, Mongol. Yeah.
Because I think London is 52 degrees north, I think. Could be wrong on that one. I've got a feeling the 48th was a split between, let's say, somewhere like Vietnam or Korea, I think.
That's what I thought, but I'm no expert there at all.
Have we discussed the fake army that was built in Britain?
Not yet, and I've been thinking about that too. For D-Day,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Oh,
And the best thing that they ever did, although at the time it pissed off a certain American general, was to put Patton at that base, because on the other side of the English Channel was Rommel, and Rommel knew of Patton. So in Rommel's mind, wherever Patton was where the actual invasion was going to take place. So Patton, it was made known where Patton was, and he happened to be at the fake base, and that helped to add credibility to that being the launching point for D-Day.
For those of you who don't know what the fake base is, I think most of you do, but they had, in preparation for D-Day, they were doing decoys, kind of like they talked about where they'd put fake armaments on planes. Well, instead of fake armaments, they made an entire division of fake tanks, fake landing craft, everything. And they set it out on the beaches and on the planes and everything, like they're going to be loaded up onto ships to cross the channel and make an attack much further north than what the actual D-Day attack was at. And it fooled the Germans completely.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of that was actually done by the people, especially people from Shepperton Studios, which is about 5 miles from where I used to live. My family used to live in Shepperton, very famous British studios. But yeah, it's blow up. I mean, you're talking blow up tank, literally blow up tanks.
Right. Then they had to ground them so they didn't blow away.
Yeah, and you see film of them getting literally running out of a canvas plane, and I've staked the plane out, and you've got someone who's got a stick in his hand, long tall stick, and the top of that stick is the fake propeller, and he's walking out to stretch his thing out so it's full up, and just thrusting it into the ground. It's amazing.
And not only that, but they even went through the trouble of every day moving them. So that it would look like they were moving. So it wasn't just they put the tank there and that's where it stayed. Every day it would move as if it was moving towards the coast.
I mean, they didn't sorry, yeah, go.
Colin's got a picture of a Messerschmitt 262 there, and it is beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love that. I love my Airfix ME-262s. Half of them ended up turning into space planes because I'm a science fiction lunatic. But yeah, beautiful. Don't forget though, of course, Frank Whittle invented the jet engine, and we had the Gloucester Meteor about the same time. Just came in, I think, just literally at the end of the war, the Gloucester Meteor started coming in, which was the other one I had up there. I think that was roughly the end of the war.
A lot of people don't consider too that, you know, one of the major developments about having those jet engines wasn't just the engines themselves; it was the swept back wings.
Yeah,
those planes wouldn't fly if they didn't do that. It would have tore them up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the weird thing is, it's one of those weird things where you see, you know, where governments, militaries don't do scientific advancement, because you've got Frank Whittle comes up with the consequences behind the jet engine in the 30s, I think. Goes to the RAF, and the RAF aren't particularly interested until towards the end of the war. You get, but you guys are just as bad. You get Robert Goddard comes up with the concept of the rocket engine. No one listens to him. Towards the end of the war, V2s, comments are made. You know, well, what is this rocket thing? Well, why don't you ask Robert Goddard? He invented it. And he'd been there in the States. It's these weird things. The concept of people not being recognised as geniuses in their own lifetime. Really
right.
weird.
Right.
Yes, Ethan, I was going. They did. They actually had fake radio traffic. In fact, as I discovered a while ago on, I think it was another Lindy Beige video. I'm going to have to get him to sponsor me for advertising him. They did big ones in the Middle East as well. So almost identical thing was done in World War II, as was done at the beginning of Gulf War. Either 1 or 2, whichever. I can't remember which one it was, but again, that's beautiful. Again,
That's my favorite one there.
That's the glider I was telling you about.
Yep.
It would be launched up to height by the rocket. The rocket would peter out, and then that plane would fly. The problem with it was the wheels were too small. So when it landed, it more than often than not crash landed. But yeah, that was the other one, the one that's not talked about as much because it wasn't as successful of a design, but it was mass produced because it was easy, cheap, and did the job.
Beautiful, beautiful plane, though. Absolutely beautiful. And you're basically riding on an Acme rocket.
Yep.
And actually, a lot of these ones were captured by the USSR. If you notice certain parts of this and you look at a MiG, they look eerily familiar, do they not?
Yeah.
And those were the two big countries that came out of this with a lot of scientists and technology that they didn't have was the United States and Russia.
Yes.
Russia was pushing into Germany, and Russia wanted all of the scientists. They wanted the scientists, they wanted the blueprints, they wanted the technology, they wanted it all for themselves. And they were pretty pissed when they found out that a lot of the big brain scientists had gotten out and gotten into the United States, had gotten into U.S. hands.
Operation Paperclip.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip.
Well, not only that, but it was decided by them very, very quickly that they would much rather surrender to the Americans or the Allies than surrender to the Reds.
And hail Dave Bob, brother. I'm glad to see you here.
Excellent. Got some internet. Fantastic. Glad you came through all okay.
Yeah, him and Clobbering Times. Dave Bob and Clobbering Times. I'm so happy that it didn't completely wipe you out, guys, because Category 4 ain't nothing to scoff about.
No, very glad you guys are okay.
And it's just suddenly occurred to me that I might actually not have chosen the best avatar, because that's not a Spitfire.
Nope.
The other one. It's a Hawker Siddeley Hurricane.
Yes, it is.
And
a
I've
Hurricane.
literally just made that connection when Dave Bob came in there. I was just saying that was I always preferred making the Spitfire to the Hurricane to the Spitfire to the model maker. I literally just thought. Oops. Maybe not the best one.
So really quick, before we end this, I want to go around the panel real quick. Do you guys want to do this again?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Adega?
Good.
Dave Bob, if you want in on the next one, shit, we'll have a 5-man panel. Really quick, though, guys, before we get out of here, give me your, and if you want to pull up a picture you're more than welcome to put up a picture. Give me your favorite plane of the war. If you had a favorite plane, only one that you could pick, this is my favorite right here, what would you pick?
I'd have to go with the Corsair, right at the end of the war.
Corsair. Rambling Canuck.
It's a tie between the Spitfire and the Mustang.
Spitfire and the Mustang. Colin.
Just get me one up right now. And it's actually not a fighter.
Ah.
The Mosquito was cool too.
Not going to come up. Hold on a second. However, I have actually got a theme tune playing around inside my head, which is distinctly possible. I might have just given the answer away to anybody from my side of the pond who is actually listening. Let's just,
Ooh, Dave Bob, that's a good choice. The P-38.
I'll go ahead and share mine real quick while we're waiting on Colin. There she is, ladies and gentlemen.
P-38.
P-38 Lightning. I absolutely love the curves. I love the dual engine. I love the cockpit sitting in the middle. I love the wings. I everything about this plane I love. I would love to have been able to fly one of these. I would shit if I could buy one of those now. I would buy it now and have it.
I just actually, funny you bring that one up. I just finished watching a documentary where one of the test pilots went over it and told everything that they changed during testing. It's a really cool thing.
What do we got there, Colin?
Bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Come on, don't let me down, Brits.
Lancaster.
Correct. It's busting down. It's the Lancaster. I have to be. Having said that, it's close. I mean, there was a lot of fantastic.
The damn busting Lancaster.
Yeah, the damn buster just has to have that slight place. I was thinking earlier on today, because again, this early film with them, the first medieval reenactment show I ever did, God, at least 10 years ago now, was a multi-period one. And we actually had at one point the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight flew over. And
oh, nice.
The Battle of Britain Memorial Flight is a working Lancaster. And on one side is a working Hurricane, and on the other side is a Spitfire. Everything literally just stopped dead when they were over. It's an amazing sight.
Absolutely beautiful. I want to thank you guys for being here tonight. I want to thank the audience for being here tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. Adega, thank you, brother. Rambling Canuck, ColinP Smith.
Hey, no problem.
Thank
No
you, guys.
problem.
Thank you guys so very much. Quick announcement. On Saturday, we are going to be watching Highlander for the Popcorn Movie Madness. It is the last Saturday of the month, and we've got Highlander coming up. I don't remember who remembers that. If you would like an invite, send me.
There can be only one.
Yeah, there can be only one.
So the one with the 5 sequels. Yeah, right. Okay. Get the message for your own movie, guys.
Oh, shit. But yeah, with Clancy Brown as the Kurgan, he is my favorite villain of all time in the Highlander series. You know, it's better to burn in hell than to fade away. And of course, Sean Connery as Juan Sanchez Lobos Ramirez, Chief Metallurgist to King Charles V of Spain.
The Scot. It's funny with a Scottish accent.
So, guys, I hope to see you all there. I will see every one of you tomorrow morning for the last Mornings of Mischief this week. And we're going to have Loriana Creel on. Can't wait to have her on again. She has been missing most of the month because she's been on vacation in Florida. But she's back, and we're going to rock it in the mornings. So everyone take care. Have a great night. Thank you again, panel, for being here. Thank you, every one of you out there. And we're going to do this again next week with Dave Bob. We'll have one big last blowout on World War II.
Sounds good.
Great evening, everyone.
Yep. We've got 6 years to cover, so.
Everyone have a great night, and we will catch you all later.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.